All right, let's start with the NFL. Let's start with the game that was on NBC last night. Carson Wentz lifting his team, Houdini'd it, and beat San Francisco. So these were real questions this week asked by, I think, legitimate reporters. A reporter in San Francisco asked Kyle Shanahan, could Jimmy Garoppolo lose his job if he doesn't start winning, to Nick Mullins? Kyle Shanahan, of course, smirked and said, no. And another reporter on the other coast, I think he is fully employed, I would guess, asked Doug Peterson, could Carson Wentz lose his job because he can't win a lot with what you're giving him, which is junk? And Doug Peterson said, no, Carson Wentz is going to start. Both of those, of course, were answered last night. Sorry, neither Garoppolo or Wentz or Patrick Mahomes. There's only one of those, and there's only one Russell Wilson. But Nick Mullins last night had George Kittle, maybe the best tight end in football, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jarrett McKinnon, a healthy offensive line, and they had to pull him. He couldn't, and Kyle Shanahan, the smartest young offensive coach, they had to pull him. Literally, you can't even move those guys. Carson Wentz, meanwhile, his leading receiver was Travis Fulgham, who played at Old Dominion. I love college football. I didn't know they had a football program. He's a practice squad guy. He also had John Hightower, Richard Rodgers, Greg Ward, and he goes on the road and wins with that. Garoppolo would have won last night. Wentz, if he had anything, would have more wins this year. Can we stop asking those questions? Carson Wentz in first place this morning. And for the third year in a row, he's dealing with absolutely nightmarish personnel. Offensive linemen hurt, wide receivers, six-round guys who went to programs I didn't know existed. And here's Carson Wentz on the road, just like last December. Philadelphia's in first place. It's actually, frankly, it's amazing. I'm watching that game last night. I'm like, he's going to pull this off. Carson Wentz is going to pull this off. San Francisco was missing a running back or two, but had the best tight end in football, legitimate star wide receivers, healthy offensive line. They didn't play terribly well, but nonetheless, they had to pull their starting quarterback. So if Carson Wentz's career was a cooking show, it would be called Chopped, because he has to take these weird, odd ingredients and make a meal out of it every week. And it's hard, and sometimes the meal is, but last night he somehow made edible out of regrettable, and that's what he's done his entire career in Philadelphia, a city that's not very forgiving, where the pressure is enormous. And after the game, at least Doug Peterson, his coach, who played in the NFL at quarterback, at least he appreciates what Carson Wentz did last night.
He played inspired. He led the football team tonight for the win. I mean, and quite frankly, I mean, yeah, it might not have been perfect, but he gutted out several plays tonight, and my hat's off to him for just continuing to battle and continuing to stand in there and make some tough throws and some tough decisions. And he did a nice job.
We never consider in this league, it's amazing. We all understand that if I inherited a billionaire father and you inherited chaos in your life, you would understand that it's been easier for me than you, if that was the case, right? Like, we understand that in real life. But in football, for quarterbacks, we never consider, Patrick Mahomes has Andy Reid, good owners, great GM, Cheetah, Travis Kelce, a good offensive line. Now, Mahomes is great, but he's just driving a Mercedes here. Carson Wentz's car breaks down, and you're asking him to win a road race. This kid is a great young player. I think a little bit of it's in his head, but last night is what he does. First place with guys, 6th and 7th round guys who played in colleges at programs that I didn't know even existed. Let's talk Dallas Cowboys. They have two major problems in Dallas. They have an owner who only wants to hire a coach he can control. He had Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells. He couldn't control them, so Jerry didn't like them. So he hires coaches, Jason Garrett, now Mike McCarthy, he can control, that won't challenge him and push back. And then Mike McCarthy is a head coach, and this is a problem too. It's the same problem. He's not willing to hire an assistant coach or a coordinator that will threaten or challenge him. There's an old saying in business. It's called A's, as in A people hire other A's. They're secure. B bosses, B executives hire C's. People they can control, keep their thumb on, that won't threaten them or won't challenge them. And Mike McCarthy went out and as a defensive coordinator hired Mike Nolan, who'd been a linebacker coach for the Saints for years. Nobody was looking at him as a DC. He peaked 20 years ago with the Ravens. Easy to peak when you have Ed Reed and Ray Lewis. Mike Nolan is Jurassic. And all McCarthy has done, McCarthy's an insecure guy. And we talked about this at a press conference 2 weeks ago. McCarthy's become the old dad that buys skinny jeans so he can seem younger. He keeps going to press conferences and using like analytics jargon, and he calls Peter King, come interview me in my basement. All I'm doing is analytics. Old, outdated guy. Aaron Rodgers said he had a low football IQ. He was outdated, and he wanted to make sure everybody knew, I am Mr. Analytics guy. And so he drops jargon at a press conference. This is an owner who doesn't want to be challenged. Jimmy Johnson and Bill Parcells challenged Jerry. He didn't like that. He could control Jason Garrett, and he could control Mike McCarthy. And Mike McCarthy hires Mike Nolan, who once hired him years ago. Kind of, Mike Nolan's not getting the money and the jobs he wants, so he can control them. And this is the mess you get. Cleveland literally lost Nick Chubb to an injury and still rushed for 307 yards. There was 3.5 hours. Did they make any adjustments in Dallas? Literally, Cleveland got the edge anytime they wanted to for 3.5 hours, and Nick Chubb got hurt. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. No adjustments. Standing around, fooled badly on reverses. You don't have to be a football coach to see a well-coached team. You don't have to be a football coach to see a poorly coached team. But Mike McCarthy hired a defensive coordinator, and Jerry hired a coach who don't want to be challenged, who don't want to be threatened, and feel outdated. And what Cleveland did, this organization in Dallas is about people protecting their acreage, protecting their space, protecting their title. And this is what you get. If you're not willing to challenge yourself in life, if you're not willing to hire people who may be smarter than you, every time you read a business book, what do they always say for the CEO? Hire somebody that's smarter than you, that can challenge you, that makes you rethink things. The last thing you want to do leading a company is hire people you can control who don't challenge you. Yes men. Dallas is yes men territory. This is a bad football team, and it's not getting worse. And it's not, listen, Baker Mayfield threw for well under 200 yards. They really didn't have to throw the football. They used a couple of tricks. They ran the football. It was not a complex game plan. You would know going into this game if you're Dallas, what are they going to do? What has Cleveland done so far this year? Limit Baker, run the football, 1 or 2 gadget plays. That's what they're doing. That's what they did. 3.5 hours, no adjustments. I mean, just because you're in Big 12 territory, Dallas, doesn't mean every one of your games has to look like a Big 12 football game. You could occasionally make a defensive stop. Mike McCarthy, at least now acknowledging his defense, and Mike Nolan is a major issue that's not getting better.
Definitely, we're in a scheme change from the prior scheme here, and we're not off to a good start. So the worst thing we can do is narrow everything down and be a one-call defense. I refuse to do that. That's not the path. Well,
this isn't either. Again, everybody in Dallas is protecting their turf. And the loser, of course, is Dak Prescott, who's throwing for 400 yards a game. But Dallas couldn't make stops. The games all look the same. They fall into holes. They're coming back. And some of them are garbage yards, but they're yards. And Dak, it would be better if Dak was better early and the game plan was better. But, the loser in this is Dak, who's going to set all sorts of Cowboy records and perhaps NFL records. But, last team with the ball wins. You got to make some stops. Dallas did for about half a quarter. Cleveland broke it open late, and this is what you get. A franchise more concerned about not being challenged than being challenged, getting better and winning games.